All right, thank you, Mr. Hanson. Let's call to order. Note that Mr. Wasson is not here at this time. We'll have to follow up with him, see what's going on, but all other members of the committee are here. Mr. Hanson, do you have a presentation about COLAs and health insurance?
I do, Mr. Chair, members of the Budget Committee. In your packet is current status of COLA and where we are with COLA and with our current health insurances. After that, there will be a memo talking about the modifications from what we our recommended changes from what we approved in April to what I'm recommending we formally approve in May. And then there's detail sheets of where those changes occurred. So I'll start off with the COLA, cost of living and health insurance memo. Portland CPIW was something that we used in the past. That indicator is no longer available. They've reconstructed how they do CPIs. It's basically CPI on the West Coast for populations under 2.5 million. Seattle still has their own, San Francisco still has their own, and LA has their own. After that, no one has their own, and they kind of just throw everyone in a category. If you look at last month, which is the last reading for the West Coast under 2.5, the March inflation rate compared to a year before that was 9.8%. So it continues to go up. It's been going up about 0.7 to almost 1 a month now over the last 2, 3, 4 months. So things have dramatically risen in the inflation category, and how much more it does, don't know. I just heard this morning the average price of gas climbed over $6 a gallon in California. Nationwide, I think it's at $4.50. So that's a big driver, obviously, of inflation right now. So the good news is we're in the middle of all of our labor agreements. AFSCME and the deputy DAs have 1 more year, which is the fiscal year that we're talking about. DSA, which is our deputy sheriffs, and our parole and probation people, which is called FAPO, they will be in the 2nd year of their 3-year agreement. To let you know, we have opened up some mid-term negotiations. We're still in the process of doing that. Those negotiations center around extending those labor agreements, but also increasing COLAs so our employees don't get hurt as bad. When we negotiated these original contracts, the COLA was in the 3.5 range, not the 9.5 range. So at that time, if inflation had been that big when we were negotiating, we wouldn't have settled at where we settled. So we are in pretty good shape, or actually very good shape financially. I made a proposal to the board, and we're trying to work out some mid-year contract negotiations. And we should have an answer before July 1, but we don't have answers right now. So we're just in the process of doing that. The other big driver of personnel costs, at least this coming fiscal year, is going to be health insurance. Kaiser Permanente is going up approximately 14.7%, which is higher than anticipated. But if you look at it over the last 3 years, it's averaging less than 5%. And for health insurance, if you average less than 5%, you're actually doing pretty well. We were held 2 years ago. It was no change in rates. The year after that, or this last year, we went down 3 or 4%. And then I think they're playing catch up right now, trying to recover from COVID and the lack of medical attendance and those kind of things. Pacific Source, which is our other health insurance option for our employees, we do not have a final number. It's going to be somewhere between 3% and 5%. So I just put 4% on the board. The 4% is lesser than I had put into the budget. If you want to know employee ratio, 2/3 of our employees are on Kaiser, 1/3 are on Pacific Source, and that's for those that take insurance. We have about 30% of our employees that opt out of insurance, which lowers the overall cost. We pay a stipend to those employees, but they aren't affecting our rates or having the big county contributions. So, and then on PERS, Norbert got to hear the auditor a little on PERS. We're in a dead year. So we're in the second year of the rate increase. So we will get new rate increase numbers come December of 22, which will go into effect July 1 of 23. Usually our increase is 4 to 5%. Out on the street in the rumor mill, that rate will be lesser than because of timing of returns and that and that's investment returns on the PERS. They're going to lower employer rates, which, as I spoke earlier, I disagree with because they kind of kick the can down the road. If you have a liability, don't give us a break. Just keep our liability getting smaller rather than continuing at the rate it is. So that's where we are on COLA and health insurance. So if you have any questions, happy to answer that, or we can just move forward and talk about the formal approval for the budget and that.
Any questions? All right, let's move forward with the formal approval of the budget, Mr. Nelson.
So the two main things that the budget committee has to do is obviously approve the county budget in totality, and then also set the tax rates. So in my memo, I'm requesting that you set the tax rates at the 1.716 per thousand, which is our limit on our permanent rate, and then levying the full amount of the current public safety levy, which is 42.5 cents per thousand. So that's where we are on those two items. You formally or tentatively approved a budget in April 5th and 7th. The only change you made to that proposed budget was increasing a $10,000 amount for CASA, increasing it from $15,000 to $25,000, which in turn reduced the general fund contingency by $10,000. What I have recommended for the formal approval in the following is reducing the parks budget by $200,000 and also the revenues by $200,000. We're currently beginning a project there at Buena Vista Park. It's a $1.6 million project. We're probably going to have expenses of $200,000 this current fiscal year. We'll get reimbursed for those. So the expenses for next year aren't going to be the full amount that I had budgeted. So reducing both the revenues, which is the reimbursement from the State Marine Board, and our cost for that year is my recommendation. And that is the only recommendation that I have for the general fund. So it would be a net reduction in the total general fund of $200,000, both expenses and revenues. The next modification I have is for the Public Works Fund, and that's an increase in the total budget of $500,000. That $500,000 is in revenue wise is in the beginning fund balance. And then in the expenditure side, I added an additional $75,000 to transfer to the Public Works Construction Fund, and a reduction in or an addition of $425,000 to the contingency. So the next recommendation I have is increasing or actually creating a new fund, which is going to be called the Coordinated Housing Fund. June 1st, we will be doing a supplemental budget to actually create it for this current fiscal year because we may receive monies. But we really need it in for next year because we will expend monies. So the total budget for that new fund is $3.5 million. It's funded by a $1 million pilot project that we secure. We were one of 8 entities or counties to receive that funding. It's to address homelessness and prevention. And then there's an additional $2.5 million from OHA that is directed toward behavioral health. But I'm going to stick that 2.5 million in this fund because it's supposed to address homelessness and those kind of things. And I didn't want to mix those funds with regular behavioral health money. So putting it in this fund. So the creation of that fund is 3.5 million. We will probably have very little in expenditures next fiscal year, 22, 23, until we have a 5-year plan, which is part of the pilot project that we do. And then we will start addressing bullet points in that 5-year plan. And then we'll probably be expending more money. However, most of the money in the budget is for contingency. We can move it from contingency up if we are able to address certain things sooner. So you still have the flexibility in your expenditure. You just don't have the authorization without coming back before the board to move it by resolution from contingency up into a true appropriation. So that's what we have with that new fund. Then we have a reduction of $400,000 in public health, basically reducing the beginning fund balance by $400,000. We received large amounts of money from both the state and the feds that we were unable to spend during the COVID process. We've had to write at least one check so far back to the state. That was a little under 400,000. So I reduced both the beginning fund balance by 400,000. And the corresponding expenditure is the reduction in contingency. So it's all self-contained within public health, but it is a net overall reduction of 400,000 for public health. And then in behavioral health, there's an addition of 4 million, which is monies that are getting funneled to the county. It could exceed 4 million, but I just picked that as the current number. We know we're going to receive some monies for addictions and addressing those issues. We know we're going to get at least 3.268 million, but that number is being negotiated. It could be negotiated up. There's some other monies that we're going to be receiving that we do not know what those totals are. So that adjustment of 4 million is just, unfortunately, the beginning. We'll probably modify it up another million come adoption. But at least in the approval process, I know about these monies right now. I don't know about some of the others. So I added $4 million to the behavioral health budget. So overall, it's a pretty substantial increase. This is all new money flowing to the county. Moves your approved budget from 112 million to 120. So you only broke 100 a year ago, so you can see how much money is flowing into the system. Good, bad, or indifferent, it's coming. So We just got to do our best to address it. So those are the recommended changes. If you want to look at the details, you can look at the details here and that'll be fine. So, I'm recommending that you approve the tentatively approved budget with the recommended changes, and then later set the tax rates at 1.716 and 42.5 cents. So
Thank you for your report, Mr. Hanson. I believe we have time allotted for public comment.
yeah, if anyone wants to speak, they can.
Any public comment at this time? All right. It appears that there are no members of the public who would like to comment. Do I have a motion at this time? Any further discussion?
I move that we approve the 22-23 budget with the modifications Mr. Hanson talked about.
Second.
Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Is there a motion regarding the tax rate for the general fund?
I will move that we adopt a general fund tax rate of $1.716 per thousand and on the general fund and public safety operating levy tax rate of 42.5 cents per thousand.
Is there a second?
Second to that.
Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. I believe that concludes the business of the
Budget committee.
Budget Committee.
And I thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good day.